Good morning. Good morning to everyone, and a special warm welcome to Professor Kemfert. It is an honor to have you here, Claudia. I am sincerely grateful for you accepting to be with us today. Thank you all for coming to our 9th symposium. 1 year ago, climate change mitigation was top of our agendas. Now, beyond the severe impact of health, the enormous socioeconomic consequences of the pandemic have left a mark on all economic sectors, the energy sector included. But in spite of the health risk and the severe deterioration of economic activity, new challenges and opportunities have opened up based on innovation and technological progress, key for the ecological transition. Currently, the main challenge for many governments is to decide in a very short time how to prioritize the significant amounts of available resources into projects that will accelerate the ecological transition and the global economic recovery. In this context, this symposium is set up as a forum for discussion and analysis of the current challenges, with the aim of contributing new ideas and proposals in the shaping of this new sustainable energy model. In this vein, the first table deals with the impact of coronavirus on the power sector. Simone Borghese from Florence School of Eco-Regulation analyzes the measures that Europe can implement within the framework of a climate and energy policy to achieve the objective of the Green Deal and to face the difficulties derived from the impact of coronavirus. Tora Hamas from Copenhagen School of Energy Infrastructure examines the role that green bond investments could play in global financial recovery efforts without compromising low carbon transition targets. And the third speaker of this table, Martin Ovaera from Yale and Ghent universities, will present the results from the estimation to measure and to explain the impact of coronavirus on emissions and allowances under the framework of European Union ETS. The chairman of this table is Professor Andreas Locher from Manchester University. Thank you very much, Andreas. The second table will debate energy transition in times of economic distress. The first paper, presented by Filippo Beltrani from Padova University, analyzes seasonal and zonal CO2 marginal emissions factors in the Italian power market. Pablo del Rio from the Spanish National Research Council will then present his contribution on how renewable energy options should be designed and whether specific location signals should be included to minimize total system costs. Stefan Lam from University of Toulouse, the third speaker, will address the allocation of renewable energy sources and proposes a general framework to evaluate the geographical misallocation of renewables that is potentially caused by uniform nature of feed-in tariff. Professor García Quevedo will chair the debate. Thank you very much, Jose. And the last and third table, chaired by Professor Monica Giulietti from Loughborough University. Thank you very much, Monica. will analyze new energy policies and regulations. Jensin Lu from Oxford University will ask, could technology reduce the risk of fossil assets being stranded in the power sector? Albert Roger from CEW follows and will present his research estimating technological gains and losses from international environmental agreements, the case of stock pollutant. And finally, the debate will focus on energy efficiency in the European Union with the paper of Federico Perillo from Coimbra University. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to keynote speakers, Professors Claudia Kemfert and Natalia Fabra, who will be in charge of the closing session. And now, it's my pleasure to present Claudia. Professor Claudia Kemfert is very, very well known in the world for her contributions in energy economics and climate and energy policy. Since 2004, she has been head of the Department Energy, Transportation and Environment at the very well-known German Institute of Economic Research in Berlin, and professor of energy economics and energy policy at Leuphana University. Professor Kemfert has more than 270 publications, most of them in peer-reviewed international top journals. Professor Kemfert's contributions have reached more than 5,000 citations, and she is among the 30 most influential economists in Germany. She is a member of numerous sustainability advisory boards and commissions. I can refer all the list of the important positions she has. And she is a member of several juries, including the German Sustainability Prize and the German Environment Prize. It's a privilege to have such an outstanding academic with us in the opening conference in this symposium. Professor Kemfert is going to lecture on the Corona crisis, a change for decentralized energy system transformation with full supply from renewable energy. I would like to give my sincere thanks again, Claudia, for your participation in this night's symposium. There's information to the floor. After Professor Kemfert's presentation, we will have time for discussion. If you have questions for our keynote speakers and later panelists, you are welcome to use the chat box during the presentation. Professor Kemfert, dear Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria Teresa. I'm really pleased to be with you at this important symposium. And thanks again for inviting me, also for the patience, because last year I couldn't make it because of Corona. And we met each other, I think, many years ago, where you already invited me. So finally I make it from my home office, and I'm really pleased to be part of this really important symposium. So thank you so much for having me. Yes, I have some slides, and because of administrative reasons, some people in the background help me with moving forward with the slides. And as you already heard, we have many different we have a different situation because of the Corona crisis right now. And the focus of my presentation is to look at the energy system in Europe and see opportunities for transformation towards a more decentralized energy system with a full supply of renewable energy. What I will present, I will talk about later, is also results of current projects, research projects we are doing at the German Institute of Economic Research, together with also the Technical University of Berlin. And thanks to the team for also providing this excellent study. So to start with the first slide, the next slide is just to show you where I will talk about today is to briefly outline of what the structure of my talk will be. After a brief introduction, I will tell you and explain a little bit more in detail the methodology, especially the model we have developed and applied to present also today the results about it. I will talk also about the European market of climate neutrality and economic recovery, especially because we are facing three crises, basically. The first one is the corona crisis, the second, the economic crisis, which results immediately out of it. But the next crisis are two. One is the climate crisis, but also the energy crisis, because we have to face a full transformation, and how it might look like I will explain here today, and will briefly show you some economic implications and how this transformation, especially in Europe, might be included and also implemented, and will explain a little bit about the solidarity which is necessary in total Europe for this just transition. And with this, we can move to the next slide, please. And this is all known. I mean, this is what we are facing right now, is the Global Green Deal from the European Commission, which is already implemented in some areas, and especially because of the corona crisis, we have a recovery program immediately starting with also providing financial aid, stimulus and recovery packages, especially also for reaching some areas of the transformation. And the main goal is a zero pollution Europe. We have several other goals, especially also related to the circular economy. It's the agriculture sector, which is addressed as well with the European Green Deal aims, and also the achieving climate neutrality, say it that way, where we have to carefully define what we mean with this. And I will talk about why we think there are also some risks related to this term, and why we should focus on environmental aspects and sustainability towards renewable energy. But in total, you see it's addressing also the sustainable transportation system, the financial aspects related to this, and to reach a clean, reliable and affordable energy system, which is the main goal in reaching this. And with all this, it addresses the main issues we are facing also for the transformation of the energy system. And if we are moving to the next slide, we see that we have basically three areas where we have to focus in order to reach the climate goals, which means we have to reduce emissions by 80 to 95% by the mid of the century. And the emission reduction potentials are huge in these three areas, which is on the one hand the energy efficiency, the energy saving components, especially also in the industry sector. You see here in the slide the different wedges related to it, so industry, power, transport, district heating and buildings. And especially in the industry sector, energy efficiency improvement plays a crucial role. In addition, also transformation or clean technologies in the broadest sense based on renewable energy as well, for example, green hydrogen and others. That's one part of it. The second part is renewable energy needs to be included in almost all sectors, especially in the power sector, the district heating sector, which is the full transformation towards renewable energy. But in addition, and that's the third part of it, we are looking at the sector coupling in a way that we electrify the other sectors, which is heat and transportation. And in Germany, we're starting also to include more instruments to reach that, but in order really to be efficient and to not to waste too much energy, if we want to apply also the scarce renewable electricity in a careful way, we have to really see where the most of the demand is, and the highest potentials to be efficient is to electrify both the heat and the transportation sector, for example, in the building sector with heat pumps, and in the mobility sector with electric mobility. So that's really important to look at these three aspects related to this. Next slide, we see that I jump to the methodology, and we can move over immediately and just briefly explaining of the model and the methodology we are using when I now show you results and potentials related to both the transformation but also to economic aspects. This is what I just explained, the European Green Deal. You see these goals are going into a modeling system, which is an energy system model called Genesis mod, which has a pathway to 2050 for the full entire energy system, which is all, as I just explained, electricity, heating, and transport. And this energy model, Genesis mod, is coupled to another modeling part, which is called any mod, and here we couple it to the electricity and gas sector because it's interlinked, not only because of the electrification of the transport sector, but also if we are talking about, for example, of green hydrogen or synthetic fuels, the gas sector is involved. So what the model Genesis mod is doing is it defines and identifies the electricity demand, including the sector coupling. That means also the electricity demand of the other sectors. So investment is done endogenously until 2030, and what we get at the end is what are the constraints? Is the emission reduction goals, all the constraints coming from the Green New Deal, and the model decides how to invest and where to invest related to the individual aspects that needs to be reached. And we have also production of electricity-based gases, that is meant hydrogen and synthetic fuels, that is implemented in the different sectors. But again, you see immediately the model results that shows that in order to not let the electricity demand explode, because we intend to use, for example, hydrogen, synthetic gas in all sectors, we need to really take it carefully and assure that efficiency first and renewables first is included in the whole framework. So at the end, you see we get results and a conclusion, a full transformation of the energy system. We get also some macroeconomic effects. Although this is an energy system model, I have to say it's not a macroeconomic model where which we do have at the German Institute of Economic Research as well. So sometimes if we are interested, especially in employment effects in Germany, for example, or business effects, we use business models, especially macroeconomic models, in order to quantify it and see what kind of stimulus package impacts we get, especially on the economic sector. Here is basically the focus also primarily on the energy system and how this transformation is reached, and get some macroeconomic indicators out of it and some energy and environmental implications. We show as well the emissions, of course, from fossil, and also from renewable. So that's basically the framework we use. The next slide shows briefly the approach, because I know here are many modelers in this room at this symposium. Just to explain briefly, the approach is a brownfield approach where we are using especially also the grid information of especially this year, next year, and the renewable energy capacities we have right now. The consideration is always of a completed a year. The time resolution is that we have an hourly resolution for electricity. For heat, we use 4 hours and 1 day for electric mobility. We have also the flexibility because of the sector coupling. This should be sector coupling. Sometimes auto correction of the program is interesting. So it's, there is an sector flexibility, of course, included. It's a daily resolution for gas-based energy resources, just to explain of the differences of the time resolution. The spatial resolution is that we have Europe as a continent, as a country level, but also in Germany we have we can distinguish between one node or 38 regions. Especially right now we have a current project where we look at the impacts of 100% renewable energy on different regions in Germany, and we are interested in especially the grid and the grid access and the stability of the system on a decentralized level, and what does it mean to compare a more decentralized approach with a centralized approach. So for this we need different kind of regions we are looking at, and the sectors are already mentioned. It's electricity, gas, and also we are modeling the additional electricity demand also from heating, from industry and buildings, and also from mobility sectors, because we want to see what does it mean if we electrify the system to 100% renewable energy. Next slide, please. Briefly about results, especially related to climate neutrality and some economic effects. So if we just move to this next slide, please. That means this is already, I already talked about. We need to move to the next slide now. Sorry, I didn't see that this was okay. Now the next slide, please. So we see the first results. It's a Paris Agreement which we model, and here we see the emissions. So we see what we can meet as a rapid decarbonization of the system. So we are starting with you see the energy structure of today with a lot of fossil, coal, oil, and gas, and a little bit of nuclear. And this is basically phased out, and the emissions are decreasing rapidly, especially because we on the one hand, increase the renewable energy share. We see we have a lot of solar, wind, onshore and offshore, a little bit of biomass and hydro. And because we reached the emission targets, we see that there is a need to phase out not only coal right soon, but also nuclear is not in the model anymore because of cost reasons. So we include special also costs. We did a cost calculations for nuclear on a different study we include here as well. So we have no fossil fuels or nuclear power after 2040. So this is basically phased out. But one constraint, as I already said, is energy efficiency, and also energy efficiency first and behavioral change that leads to a significant reduction of primary energy demand. So these are two impacts. Primary energy demand is substantially declined, electricity demand is substantially increased. So this is a result that we see a full electrification of almost all sectors. Next slide, please. So some macro effects, which I have talked about, is that climate neutrality requires a stronger ambition for greenhouse gas emission targets and beyond. What we also figured out in another study is that myopic expectations or not enough foresight for the longer period leads to stranded investments, especially also in fossil natural gas infrastructure. On the other hand, means that we are seeing here, these are the yearly emissions, that the emissions in all sectors are going down if there's perfect foresight and constraints which are long-term, not only short-term, because of 2030 and 2050. These goals need to be fixed. Otherwise, we get some rebound effects where the model in the first years invests, for example, into fossil energy and then has to shut it down immediately. So here we see that there is reached these emission goals, and we calculate also environmental and health benefits of almost 10 trillion, which we compare to the BIU scenario. These are some cost factors which we include also from other studies of the European Environmental Agency. So what we see is that we at least need a reduction target for 2030, at least to 60 and 65%. So right now, Europe is going on the right track, although it needs to our opinion, increase in order to avoid stranded investments. On the next slide, we see that the cumulative emissions and the annual emissions related to the individual targets. So we have a BIU target and compare that with the so-called Paris target, and you see a concrete emission reduction and also an immediate emission reduction, which can be translated also to political emission reduction needs, which are quite soon, and the sooner we reduce emissions, the more is the chance or the opportunity to really reach the Paris targets of keeping the emissions below this level, which is needed. So the sooner we start, the better, and the more likely it is that we reach the Paris Agreement. Next slide shows the major economic benefits that we have calculated. On the one hand, you see the need or the investments which the model shows for renewable energy and storage. These investments, which we can also include in other modeling frameworks, show that they are also creating economic benefits on many sectors. But you see the amount of sustainable investment is here shown, which is over 3,000 billion over the whole time framework, we have to say, in renewables. On the other hand, there are avoided economic costs of fossil fuel imports, which we calculate here as well, of approximately 2,000 billion at the same time. So to our opinion, we always have to make a net cost balance assessment, and both here again, investment into renewables is crucial, but also sustainable investments into efficiency, especially for the sector coupling. That means insulation and transport, which is crucial in order to keep the investments into renewables at a lower level. If we move to the next slide, some conclusion on this part of this presentation. We see here that on the one hand, as I already said, is important to increase the greenhouse gas reduction target, which the European Union did. But again, we have to face the sooner we start emission reduction, the more likely we will be able to reach the target. We also have to address the decarbonization of the transport and heating sector, which means related to the modeling results, full electrification, and continue the recovery progress with sustainable investments. So our recommendation here is to combine the recovery packages and invest it into especially renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable technologies in industry and all the other sectors. The don'ts are is no bridge functions of fossil fuels. So any kind of bridge discussions we have right now to prolong the time of any kind of fossil fuel is not helping. It is not bringing the emission down enough that we need in order to meet the Paris Agreement targets, and no subsidies to maintain fossil fuels, fossil applications, or natural gas power plants, and petrol fuels for transport. So it's inefficient to do so, and it would mean substantial more investments into stranded technologies. So the next part of the presentation, which goes to the fourth slides, next slide, please, is showing that I will talk about briefly about some basic energy economic implications and show you some results. If we move to the next presentation, we see what we have just seen with the emissions. If we looked at the results, we see that there is a coal exit already underway. You see here the year of the phase out in many European countries. It's already underway, ongoing, or already finished. And also in Germany, for example, we are quite late, but in other Eastern European parts of Europe, we see there's no phase out date at all, or not the available data which we could compare. And in others, there's already finished. So, and the focus, of course, should be on the east and the southeast eastern part of Europe, where we need a just transition towards more energy efficiency and renewable energy. In the other parts, the coal exit is underway, and especially in the western part, we see also in Spain, where also finish year is already envisaged. And with this, you see here the structure of the future energy system, which is basically after 2040 primarily implemented with renewable energy. And that's already what I have shown with the emission chart is pretty much here the same at solar, wind, onshore and offshore, and a little bit of biomass and hydro. And that's basically the structure of full supply of renewable energy in total Europe. And the first part would be a coal phase out. If we move to the next slide, we see the coal exit, which needed to be followed by a fossil gas exit. So what we have seen in most recent studies, also from the US, is that fossil natural gas is much more dangerous than assumed. It has a 20-year global warming potential, which is quite substantial, and imported natural gas is also dirtier than coal, so it needs to disappear from the energy mix at least in 2040 if we want to really reduce emissions by 80% or 95 up to 2050. So the danger is here. What we see is to have investments into so-called natural gas bridge technology, which brings the emissions not to that extent down which we need. And if we look at the next slide, we see the passenger transportation sector, which we model as well. And especially the transportation sector has a long transformation ahead. So there need to be a rapid end to fossil fuel combustion motors for passenger transportations. Nowadays, it's dominated by diesel and gasoline. The overall transport demand decreased because of behavioral change. So this is an assumption or a model results we see right now because of mobility demand changes. There is a substantial decline. And the fossil fuels have to be phased out in 2030. So battery electric vehicles take over only very small amount of hydrogen vehicles. This is because of the inefficiency and the cost, because hydrogen needs to be produced. It needs to be produced by renewable energy, which is scarce and expensive. So battery costs are declining, and this is why we see a larger share of battery electric vehicles. We have an important role for the railways, which increases also in share and overall transport. So electric mobility in general, both railway and street, are increasing tremendously. And this is also the sector coupling I was talking about at the very beginning. So if we move to the next slide, we see the nuclear phase out, which is also important. We did another study, especially on nuclear, which is very expensive, dangerous, and superfluous because of the cost. So we have, if we are comparing costs, we see that's the most expensive generation technology of all. The lifetime extension also expensive, is very expensive. It's also dangerous because of nuclear waste, because of technology risks. So we see the need for an end of a commercial nuclear power in Europe in the 2040s, especially of the cost and the risk. And the focus must now be on decommissioning and storing nuclear waste, which is, especially in Germany right now, a really crucial issue. It's a political issue, but we recommend really to phase it out and focus on renewable energy. Next slide, just to briefly again repeat that we are modeling a full 100% renewable energy system, which is also flexible. We are offering this flexibility options in the model. You see here the renewable capacity, where especially wind onshore and offshore plays a crucial role, in solar, as I already said. Storage is increased as well, and in some areas more than the others. We need a coordination, also a coupling and cooperation between the individual European countries, and we need flexibility options, not only in place of storage and energy demand, but also demand side management, which shows in the model plays a crucial role. So flexibility options are really important. You see storage is basically battery, different kind of batteries, a little bit of pumped hydro, and that's the synthetic fuels, which is also included here, a little bit of hydrogen and methanization, which are the synthetic fuels. Also plays a role in after 2040, but before, especially in the transportation sector, we see the battery cars. Now the next slide, we are almost through. I know my time is running up. So what we see here, the different countries and different member states with the initial conditions and the upcoming challenges. So where do the countries come from? You see here the European country map with the on the left-hand side with the different technology mix they have right now, and in the future is a full supply of renewable energy in all different kind of countries, in all different countries. We have also modeled the grid exchange, of course, and we have modeled, as I said, with all different kind of technologies and an hourly resolution. So it's working, and it's showing that there are solutions for all different kind of countries on the different mix of technologies, of course, and the changes in the electricity mix from 2020 to 2040, of course, result in different challenges also for the region. So each individual country is coming from a different technology mix, has different political constraints, market barriers. But from the pure energy system point of view, the model shows that there are all the potentials and options for the individual countries. Just next slide, please. The generation in the decentralized scenario. So just to show you that we are modeling different kind of scenarios. On the one hand, a centralized one where we combine all the individual countries with a full grid extension to all different European countries. and compare that with a decentralized scenario where we allow less grid connection in the model and offer more decentralized options also for different kind of technologies. And here you see it's basically solar, which is showing in the decentralized, which is coming out of model results, solar, large share is solar and wind. So it's basically solar and wind, but basically solar if you're less connected to the overall grid or to the European grid. It's more on a decentralized level, and this shows that we need less grid connection, but more decentralized solutions and more integration of solar, for example, also like prosumer approaches and batteries at home, and all the rest, which is showing here in this model. Just to show you how, as the next slide, please. Show you the model is running, the lights stay on, and the heat too. So I know there are many discussions of saying, well, there never could be a energy mix related to renewable energy. The light, there will be blackouts, they will not working, and it's unstable and all the rest. This shows you an hourly resolution, for example, for 2 selected countries like France and Poland. The energy mix can assure also cold winter weeks where we have less wind, where we have less solar, but again, wind and solar dominate. We will see also storage, and here we see the different countries, the European connection, of course, but also the storage, which is implemented, and this shows you also the variations we have from the individual electricity production mixes like solar, wind, and the rest, and how this is combined shows we have all the model results for individual countries and can show how this will look like, and also the variations, how they will look like. If we move briefly to the next slide, just to show you again the basic results, which is that the primary energy demand is declining, the electricity demand is increasing substantially because of sector coupling, and this means 2 things also for the policy world, that if electricity demands or the demand will double, we of course have to increase the share of renewable energy quite substantially in all countries. We have to phase out not only coal but nuclear as well, and renewables could provide 100% in the 2040s if we now start in increasing renewable energy drastically, and the storage of course needs to be also included as well. Now the freight transport you see on the next slide. I think we can move over, because I already said there will be a phase out of petrol fuels replaced by biofuels and hydrogen in some areas, especially freight. The long distance freight transport needs also hydrogen, but also the railway system needs to be enlarged, and where it is necessary, we see also on the individual countryside. So electricity for road transport is less efficient, as I already said, and because of the weight of the batteries, maybe we see some technological progress here, but right now there is an increase of biofuels and synthetic fuels. Heat, just the next slide, just to show you that we have all the model results here. It's a low temperature heat for buildings where we have an exit of fossil natural gas. It's now dominated by fossil natural gas, but in the future more heat pumps, and hydrogen enters at a later period, but only at a very small fraction. So here again, energy efficiency and electricity plays the major role. I'm just moving a little bit faster now because we are running out of time. Industry, the next slide. electricity-based solutions. As I already said, it's like hydrogen, green hydrogen, which is necessary. We phase out all fossil fuels for process heat, for high temperature heat production, replace it with electricity, and this is why we see the steep increase of electricity demand. I already talking. Next slide, please. I'm just moving a little bit faster. The next slide, please. Don't know why. Okay. Maybe you cannot hear me anymore, so I'm just talking about the next slide. Okay. It's not working. Okay, I'm just talking further. So, and the next slide, you would see the high temperature heat, which is basically dominated. Okay, with the now it's a little bit too fast, but just to conclude, the conclusion was a slide before, sorry. And just to tell you briefly, it's about to combine and use flexibility options, storage, networks, demand-side management, develop also, I'm the slide now, before the slide you're just showing. The do's is to favor central and decentralized developments and also develop organizational models. The don'ts is to don't replace coal with fossil natural gas, because this means stranded investment. No subsidization of fossil natural gas infrastructure right now at the European level, and no subsidizing new nuclear power plants where we don't see any future. Now, you're right, the next slide, solidarity required, as we have already shown. I'm out of time, I know. So just to explain briefly, the solidarity is required, and the account for different member states, as you have shown. We have to transform the whole energy system. A coal phase out needs to be done. And now the lessons learned from the past transitions, refrain from subsidizing the fossil and fissile industry, and also include long-term effects, international impacts, and also diversification, and minimize the risks. And especially in Eastern, Southeastern Europe, it's important also to help a just transition away from coal towards more renewables, and also include the Just Transition Fund in order to provide the economic incentives and to manage the full decarbonization at a multi-level, polycentric governance and planning, and also participation on different levels. This creates economic benefits to many areas, especially we are investing into renewables, into electrifications, into sector coupling, which offers huge job potentials, and also transition potentials. And with this, just to conclude, is to address also the energy transformation in all member states, and design a burden sharing agreement, use this Just Transition Fund as a complement to national and local initiatives, and do not rely on European initiatives only, and do not repeat errors and structure changes policies from the past, and not abusing the just transition mechanism to continue the fossil fuel activities. And with this, it's possible really to have a new start from the crisis with a lot of chances of decarbonization, digitalization, decentralization, and democratization, which offers huge economic chances and fight for three crises. Thank you very much, and thanks for giving me the time. I'm through now, so no slides. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry
Thank
for
you
the
very
confusion.
much. Thank you very much, Claudia. Now it's time for debating. From the floor, we have several questions. I think we have time for 2 questions, no more. The other questions we can send to you, and perhaps there are the opportunity for people to know your opinion. Now we have the question. We have a question from Monica Giulietti. I suppose is waiting. Monica?
Yes. Hello, Maite. Hello,
Hello.
Claudia. First of all, let me thank you for keeping, according to your analysis, the UK still within Europe, at least from an energy point of view. It's very, very refreshing and very positive. I wanted to ask just briefly about the sort of assumptions, the background to your study, in particular with respect to the role of hydrogen. The EU has recently presented a rather bold hydrogen strategy, and I wanted to ask whether the development of scenarios is somehow compatible or informed by the provisions of that proposed strategy.
Yeah, thanks so much. May I answer immediately, Teresa, or should we collect both
Yes, you
questions?
can, please.
Okay, thanks so much for this question. And indeed, we need UK not only from the energy system point of view and the future as well. So we include the full European market, also Switzerland and Norway, for example. Now, but this is a good point. Hydrogen. This is why I've shown and also made the point here clear that hydrogen is important to include. We need it as a storage, a long-term storage option, especially in those areas where we cannot use the electricity directly, and that is for long distance freight transport, long distance trucks, for ships, planes, and also for green industry. For the industry sector also needs hydrogen. This shows clearly by the model. If we are not applying efficiency and renewable electricity first, the hydrogen demand will be tripled. And that means we have to produce hydrogen. And to our analysis, it's important to focus on green hydrogen and also define environmental and sustainability criteria in Europe. As we do that with biofuels, for example, we should use the same criteria for producing hydrogen as well. And that means it needs to be a renewable hydrogen and not anything else. And that means we would need also to triple the increase of share of renewable energy, which is really substantial. And this is why the model shows clearly that we should use the electricity where it's possible, especially in the building sector for sector coupling, especially in the mobility sector for passenger cars, and that's important. But on the other hand, hydrogen is needed. It's not a new technology; we know it for 30 years. It's important to focus now on it, but also important from the very beginning to define also the sustainability criteria and environmental criteria related to this.
Thank you, Claudia. We have another second question. We have several, but we are going to offer the opportunity only for the two first questions that the panel has presented. The second question is from Andreas Locher. Andreas, how are you? It's your time for the question.
Good to see you. Andreas, can you hear us? We cannot hear you, unfortunately.
Andreas,
you have to put on the microphone.
Excellent. Okay, thanks a lot for the presentation. I think that was very helpful as well to show a little bit the perspective. I would be interested what you think about, let's say, as well, limitation to the modeling. I mean, if we would go finer in terms of temporal disaggregation, if we would go finer in terms of regional disaggregation, do you think that this would pose problems, or is that a very robust perspective as well on the long run use of these 100% hydrogen scenarios? And you also talked about the more economic general perspectives. Do you as well think that, I mean, the profit or the benefits that you outlined in the energy system perspective would carry over to these broader perspectives?
Yeah, thanks so much, Andreas, and good to see you again. I'm really happy because of this connection, also related to the last year our symposium. So, thanks again for this excellent questions. We indeed did a regional dive in, especially for Germany with 38 regions. It shows it's robust, and of course it's a computational effort, especially if we include also regional grid efforts, because we were interested also in this regional versus decentralized and national grid extension question. It shows it's robust, and it shows also reasonable results. So I would say if we dive in, it's feasible also for other countries. We now have a special group also for Poland who's doing it, and other nations are very much open. This is why I'm pleased here also to talk today. Many other areas might be interested as well and do it also for other regions as well. It's an open access model which you could use and apply and dive into a special region. So I think it's robust in a way, in if you have the accessible data included also for the regional level. So I would say yes, and it's desirable to continue on this. On the economic parts, you are completely right. I mean, that's what we do basically with a soft link, where we include the results I've presented here, also and on other modeling frameworks, so we can use or assess in a better way what really a recovery stimulus package means that is related to this kind of energy transformation on the pure macroeconomic level. That cannot be done basically with this kind of modeling framework, but it could be linked to other frameworks. So I would say that's the next step, and would be desirable also to extend that in a way, especially at the German Institute of Economic Research. We are working now on developing different kind of other economic models which could provide more information on this. So I think that's these are excellent, good points you did and asked, and I think it's desirable to continue. And for all the others which have provided questions, thanks so much. And what we can do and will do is to send the publications related to this presentation, and also the model link where you can have a look if you are interested, and send it to all participants if they are interested. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Claudia. We are very, very happy to have with us today, and thank you for your splendid presentation. Very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Now is the time for the tables, and we are going to start with our first table. The chairman is Andreas. Andreas, I don't know, you can help me just to ask to you to eliminate the break you have after your table. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, Maria Teresa. It was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.